Well, welcome everybody to our Thursday edition here of our Sales Dojo. I'm going to call it out right away. I have a fajita stain on my jacket because we have leftover fajitas from the rehearsal dinner. So we've been eating nothing but fajitas and then barbecue from the wedding. So I have a fajita stain on here. But we are thriving. We're not striving, we're thriving here today. So we're joined by Kim, Brad, and Penny. This is what we were going to talk about actually yesterday, but we kind of went off on a tangent here. Me and Brad have kind of found a gold mine when it comes to Medicare supplements. And it is a company that's been around for a while, but they're doing things a little bit different for people that aren't that healthy. So I will turn it over to Brad to kind of talk about what we found, how we've been using it, and how we've got success with it as well.
Well, sure. Nothing gets me more excited than to take somebody that has been bad health and we can't write them. And by making a few phone calls, doing some research, all of a sudden now we found a company that will accept people, saving quite a bit of money. And the main thing, get the policies issued. And that's a win that I always appreciate greatly. Now, the company Cigna for some reason, they don't really seem to rely on the Milliman report that much. Like some companies, if something shows up on Milliman, well, if it's done, you have to go appeal it, if it's true or not, and then go through the whole process. It takes months. But Cigna has, multi-tiered quoting system. They have their standard or preferred rate, standard 2, standard 3 for smokers. And a lot of times, we can get people approved now through standard 2 or 3 and save them money for things that normally would have been declinable in the past. And, some of these people are spending way, way too much, 5, 6. I had a client last week, $700 a month, and he uses the VA for everything. And he just wanted that extra, just in case he wanted to go to an outside doctor. But I got him over to a standard 2 at a high deductible plan G, saved him about $1,200 a quarter. So, those are the wins that we love. That's what gets me excited. Yeah. You're helping somebody like that. We win, they win, win-win situation. That's what we always strive for. But
I was telling a story about that. It's actually the lady that we interviewed today. I was telling her about it yesterday, how and things have kind of changed in the underwriting world. They're ever evolving. It's never going to be the same. Mm-hmm. But recently what we had an AERP point, is what I like to call it. What that means is with the old AERP underwriting, you get to a point to where AERP level 2 is going to be cheaper than what you're paying. And we prep people for that. Along with if we're in Illinois and we're talking about Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Right.
There's going to come a point to where this is how we've been not grooming, but prepping people for it. There's going to become a point to where even a level 2 policy or like Blue Cross Blue Shield, that's open enrollment year round in Illinois, there's going to become a point where it's too expensive what you're paying. And it's kind of a tipping point for you to go look over. Well, that used to be AERP. Level 2 system, you can get somebody with dementia for level 1 even. But a lot of the people that have diabetes with neuropathy, really diabetes and, that word and, that was what we would prep them for. Well, what does AERP and United Healthcare do? They release a new branch. United Healthcare Insurance Company of America, along with new underwriting, and you guessed it, new level 2 pricing. Because it used to be, you get some states like North Carolina, standard, it's not standard 2. See, Cigna's already got me.
Right, you're in that mode.
AERP level 2 was like $270 for a plan F. Like plan G, it was like $220 or so. This for somebody who's 74, 75. It was perfect. Now with this pickup, every question changed from 2 years to 5 years, first off. But they jumped the rates up now. So you look at a level 2 AERP, it's going to be between $450 and $500.
Wow,
And that's at age 72, 73. I'd hate to see what that would look like for somebody who's 89, 90, like mine. Now I call him Mr. Jerry, but Shell's grandfather, I'd hate to see what a level 2 would be for him. It'd probably be $600, $700. He's a pretty healthy guy. So luckily he doesn't have to look at it. But that is where we kind of found Cigna. So the way that they've been operating over there, it's pretty simple, at least from what we've seen. I've only had trouble one time, and that was because I had a lady that she does not have cirrhosis. She was not diagnosed with cirrhosis. And so that's all they needed. She had diabetes. She had a pacemaker, has AFib. She has COPD. She has all these things here, right? And Cigna just goes, she's fine. We just need a note for the cirrhosis. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like everybody, like I've worked with her for years trying to get it down, but nobody's ever been there to able to take her. So I was like, perfect. So we went and get a doctor's note in like 24 hours, right? Doctor's note was perfect. It said, such and such does not have cirrhosis. They take this for, it was that primary biliary. Can't remember what it was. I was like, man, this is a great note. Until I looked to the right of the note. And there was diagnosis codes on there. And one of the diagnosis codes was her being diagnosed for cirrhosis. The other one was her for having rheumatoid arthritis. And the third one was for her having myasthenia gravis. And in my head, I'm like, I had it. It was right. The ball was on the 1 yard line. I was like, who's coach for the Seahawks? Can they say? Not Pete Carroll?
Pete Carroll. Yes.
I was Pete Carroll in the Super Bowl. I had Marshawn Lynch in my backfield.
Yeah.
And we should have just forgot the codes or should have said something about it. We could have ran the ball and I threw it. Cigna intercepted it.
Yeah.
Type of situation. But that was the only hiccup I've ever had with any of the standard twos before. Like the one I did yesterday, I was kind of mad because she didn't pick up. Because it was at 4:30, and I was so excited to tell her. Because when we did the phone verification and everything like that, she was like, before you call, hold on, let me go grab my rosary. I want to hold it while I do the phone verification. And it wasn't astronomical. I mean, for her, it's $60 a month. We're not talking 700 down to 150 type of situation. But it meant that she wasn't labeled as somebody who has poor health. Is what it really meant for her. Mm-hmm. And in that phone verification, I was just telling her, be as honest as possible. Don't divulge anything that you don't have to, but just be honest with them because they're going to ask you questions. You're going to need your meds handy. Just do it. Okay. Comes back within 24 hours approved. Level standard 2 with Cigna. And she had diabetes, I think heart conditions as well. She was diabetes, heart conditions, and retinopathy. And got approved for a Plan G with a household discount because her daughter lives with her. And saved $60 a month.
Awesome.
And
Yeah,
it was just
awesome.
Astounding. I was so excited. I was so pissed when she didn't pick up. When I got her voicemail, I think I might have heard me tell her too. I was like, look, I'm going to be here for 30 more minutes. You call me back in 30 minutes before I leave home, or else I'm going to be mad. Because I wanted to tell her, I was thinking, it's always funny, one of those where you're like, man, this person's going to bake me a cake. They're going to send me a pie, something like that. I was like, you got approved. Congratulations. She was like, okay, thanks, Jacob. And I was like,
You were more excited than her.
what? I was like, what? I was like, there's a lot went into this here.
Yeah.
A lot of research. A lot of hopes and prayers for this one here. A lot of T's and P's, thoughts and prayers for this application. I lit my Jesus candle too when I submitted it. And it goes through, and then it's like, oh, thanks, Jacob. I'm like, this more exciting than she was.
I got a question on the codes. Were those codes legit?
Yes, they were in a record.
Because that's one of the things that can happen quite often. They put in codes so they get paid. And they could represent several different things. And that's what the insurance company sees, the codes. That's why they want doctor's notes and things like that, because it could be for something else, or
Right,
it's Medicare fraud. They put in something wrong
right.
and it gets pushed through, but it's in the record. And that's the type of thing you need to get cleaned up, and what we're finding more and more. But Cigna is very good with
Between the patient
appeals.
and the doctor's office. To
Correct.
Get that.
Oh, yeah. But you have to get the doctor
From
to
the
admit
record.
that, no, you don't have that,
Yeah,
which isn't always the easiest thing to do. But Cigna is probably the easiest when it comes to appeals. Get us a doctor note, saying blah, blah, and they will go ahead and approve it. A lot of companies declined. It's like the hammer comes down. Oh, we want 5 years worth of doctor records from every doctor you ever saw at your expense, and then we'll decline it anyway. It's just like there isn't any, they decided it's declined. And I had one that I fought from Milliman for 3 months, and it finally got approved. And then they said, well, since it's been so long, you have to put in a new application. I'm like, really? I put in a new app. I look at it, declined through Milliman. I'm like, hold on a second. Come on, look, I've got the Milliman report. There's nothing in here about diabetes and retinopathy. That's why it was declined for. Finally got it turned around, but oh my gosh, what a battle. But these things, when you win these things, I mean, that to me, that's a fight worth fighting. And that gets me super excited. I mean, it's like, yeah, you did the work, clients thrilled, and that's what we taught ourselves to do. We take care of the people. It's just not, okay, yeah, you're done, which has happened so much over the years.
Yep.
And we have a lot of those people, time frames where they mistakenly got put into bad health categories, and they might have been bad health at the time, but 3-4 years down the road, now that's all in the past, and now they're writable. So it just sometimes takes a little research and communicating with the client.
And it was really interesting, and I'm going to talk about another company here in a minute too, that they're starting something new with their underwriting. But with the codes, it really kind of cracks me up, because going back to that lady, this was her primary care doctor. There's no way he diagnosed her with myasthenia gravis, rheumatoid arthritis, and cirrhosis.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go to a primary care doctor for that. So in her case here, once they get, a lot of those people that do kind of get declined from the get-go, they get very motivated. She has gotten a letter, because I called Cigna back and they're like, well, it was approved, but then it got declined again because of these codes. And I go, so what's the next step? And they go, well, we need a doctor's note for each code. It's like, oh, okay. So she's got a doctor's note for the rheumatoid arthritis. She's got a doctor's note for the cirrhosis on her record, because apparently that primary biliary, they code it as cirrhosis, even though it's not cirrhosis. So we have all that. She had to make an appointment with a specialist 2 months out for the myasthenia gravis diagnosis, because it was back from like 15 years ago.
Oh, man.
So it's always one where you talk about rewarding. That's some of the most rewarding stuff you can do. Better than a T65, better than anything else. I mean, that's how I really kind of started here, was with a lot of the people that had bad health. I was just so intrigued. I was like, I want to find out why. Why do people decline for this? Why don't they decline for this? What avenue can I kind of sneak my way into, do my research, and get this thing approved? Is how I started. So that's why I'm really drawn to the underwriting aspect of it. I love it.
well, I have a question. So if the questions are in the last 5 years, in the last 3 years, in the last 2 years, have you had this? And then they decline for something that happened 15 years ago, then what's the point?
It's the medications. That's the problem. So what they do a lot of times, especially with ARP, is when there's a certain type of medication that they're taking, and I could be wrong on this, but they are deciphering between maintenance med and diagnostic med. So what they were not declining for before was maintenance med. Like I've had this diagnosis 15 years. I haven't had any issues, and I continue to take this med. Like a lot of times I've seen cancer meds decline, even though they have not had cancer in 15 years, but they're taking this particular cancer med. Well, they'll decline because that's not considered a maintenance med. It's considered a diagnostic med.
Treatment.
Yeah, it's actual treatment, right? So it's like, that's why those questions are there. And I think UHICA is trying to clean that up a little bit, because before, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and you've probably seen this, where ARP, the questions were the questions, like you say no, then you're going to get approved. But then we started to see a trickling of, well, they answered no and all that, but then the Millman report comes in and says, oh, well, you said no in the past 2 years of cancer, but you're taking this cancer medication for 15 years because you're diagnosed it and your doctor just likes you on it just to keep it in remission. Well, we're going to decline for that because that's seen as treatment. So I think what's happening in the business is, and I was going to ask after your follow-up, is like, do you see a trend in this where you're going to have these companies now saying like, all right, these boomers have been on Medicare supplements for X amount of years and they're paying $700. And all this data is now showing that people are leaning toward Medicare Advantage plans, and they're failing in the Medicare Advantage world because they have to pay all these copays and the coverage is lackluster. That now carriers are going to start doing standard 2s and standard 3s, or their own form of having elevated quoting because of the price.
I'll hit on that in a second, but to kind of go back to your question first, with it, you have to remember it is dependent upon the company. So like with that question with Cigna, that was a lifetime question for a few things, like rheumatoid was just a diagnosed with, not even treated for, just diagnosed. But you have to be aware of how companies treat certain conditions and how they ask their questions. Like, for example, we talk about the old AARP apps. Their health questions used to be, within the past 2 years, you've been diagnosed, treated, been prescribed medication, or advised by a doctor for treatment for atrial fibrillation. So you could have atrial fibrillation for 40 years. If you're taking medication, you can't answer no to that question.
Yes, you can.
Because they ask about, are you prescribed medication for?
Well, but what is implied in the question is, have you been prescribed medication? Meaning that there has been a prescription of that. There's been a prescription that has been prescribed in the past 2 years.
It also says taken, prescribed /
Yeah, they used to be real sticklers with it.
Okay.
Now there are companies like that they're kind of, it's a little tricky. Like Mutual does it from time to time too, to where I've seen people, even if you get prescribed something new, so say like a hypertension medication, cholesterol, in that application, you have to put in there, have you taken this for more than 2 years? If you put no, even if it's just a cholesterol, whatever it is, that's going to go to underwriting.
It's a red flag.
It's a red flag immediately. So a lot of these cases too, if it is a 2-year question, you have to, like the old diabetes adage here, the 2 by 2 by 2, no more than 2 blood pressure, no more than 2 diabetes, and no change in 2 years for your diabetes medication. That's really what they look for. And once you kind of peel back the onion of underwriting and you think about it from the business perspective of it. So like if you were Cigna and you had this person that's, just prescribed brand new AFib medication or whatever it is, you're going to go, something's up here. Something's not right. Like I forgot, I think it was Bev who told me, what's the, is it amlodipine? That's the 80 milligram red flag.
That's the cholesterol.
What's the, I forgot what it was, but there was 3 denominations for this one prescription. It was 20, 40, and 80. And she said, anytime somebody has been prescribed the 80 milligram, it immediately goes to underwriting because it's a history of heart conditions. They only prescribe that to you if you have a history of heart, any issues with your heart. And so little things like that along the way. And I told Chelsea I would do this as well too. It's their job, like Master P, to do the nah, like, no, I don't want you. Like that's their job.
Yeah.
Is to do that. It's not to decline you, but it's to defend the company. So really the way I kind of taught myself with underwriting is to go through each condition, learn what it is. Number one, learn how to pronounce it. Gee, learn how to pronounce it, go through it, but then find out why people don't cover it. Why you don't want somebody with myasthenia gravis. Why you don't want somebody with, whatever condition is on there. Why? Because it's too risky. And then look up how much the treatment is. Like you said, like the cancer medications. Some people are fine with it. I can't think of what's the one that they prescribe. It's mainly women after breast cancer.
Tamoxifen.
Oh, and that's resolved.
Anastrozole. That's what. Anastrozole is fine at some companies, like Mutual. They're fine with it if you've been on it for more than 2 years. Aetna will not even take a glance at you if you're on it, even though their cancer question is 3 years. But any type of cancer medication is declinable with them. But to kind of go along your lines where we're talking about the future here with it, I don't think they're getting any more lenient.
Really?
I think they're getting stricter. Because you look at some of the companies that are coming in and we get new appointments every day. Take a look at Prosperity. That is your perfect example of what the new wave is going to be. They have a preferred and they have a standard. Now, it's the lowest one out there. It's the lowest price out for a lot of zip codes across the country. It's Prosperity. They're just now starting this. But if you look at their underwriting, it's 3 pages of questions.
Like Humana.
And it's all tiered, like you meant, and it's all tiered.
Yeah.
So you start off at the yes or no, then you can go to the maybes, then you can go to, okay, this column on the left or this column on the right, depending upon how you answered up here.
Right.
And it's just this big production to where you feel like you're reading a book when you're reading the health questions. I mean, they even asked, I think they declined for if you get allergy shots or B12 injections. And that's what some of these newer companies, I think, now that Medicare Advantage is becoming more popular just from the cost aspect of it. But I think a lot of these companies are saying, okay, look, more people are going to the Advantage plan route. Now, how do we protect ourselves so we don't have to take on all of those people when they get off of them? How do we keep our book from having just gigantic bills, claims that we have to pay out? We're going to make it as strict as possible. Because take a look at AARP is another perfect example of what they did when they opened up their new branch. Is they went from, just as long as 2 years, you're fine. You're fine. We'll take people with dementia. We'll take people with Parkinson's. It's okay. It's okay. Can you fog a mirror? Okay, here's your AARP Plan G.
We
Here you
kept
go.
saying it, when in doubt, ARP it out. Because they would have such lenient guidelines.
I said I used the fog a mirror
Yeah.
before. But that's when people too, when they would be like turning 65, they're like, I'm going to go with AARP because they have that discount, until I'm 75. When I go, you don't want to be there. They're like, why? I go, because they take everybody. When you take everybody, you take everybody's problems. And they go, really? How strict is their underwriting? And I go, let me ask you this question here. Can you fog a mirror? Yeah. Okay, here's your policy. They don't ask, really, they're not very strict on anything. But you see them now finally click because they're taking on a whole lot of sick people go, holy crap, we got to do something about this.
Well, also, United Healthcare is one of the leading Medicare Advantage plans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are one of the best. They rule the D-SNP market. So they are paying for a lot of clients.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I can't speak for AARP, but this is just my reading and seeing how the company grows. I think that the Medicare supplement department was like, look, there's more competition. The smaller companies are starting to figure out how to balance, because you see some companies that come in like, Joe's, Medicare Depot, and it's like, we'll come in $30 underneath, and then they're gone a year later because they're like, oh, we did not do our homework.
Mm-hmm.
So as that bottom company, like the Puritan, starts to percolate, AARP is like, well, we're taking on this big book of business in the Medicare Advantage world. We're the number one. I wouldn't be surprised if they're number one in the nation in Medicare Advantage plans, including their D-SNP book. They're probably saying, look, we are bleeding in our Medicare supplement department. We are taking everybody. This UHICA is going to siphon off a lot of that to where we are now going to have a competitive underwriting guideline like all of the other carriers.
Mm-hmm.
So that way we can make some money in our quarters. Because, they're just, when you look at the numbers, and we were looking at this before,
Mm-hmm.
how far ahead United Healthcare was in terms of Advantage plans. I mean, if you're talking about D-SNP, it's going to be United Healthcare. You know it.
Mm-hmm.
And what did we say? What did that data point say? out of the 55% of people that are on Medicare Advantage plans, half of that were of a income level where they needed D-SNPs. I mean, that's all of that is going to be United Healthcare D-SNPs. You know, so I'm just thinking economically, like I'm wondering if they're like, all right, we have to do something because we are just, you know, inundated with these claims that they're all coming to us that we gotta tighten the ship.
It's definitely a shift in the paradigm is what's happening through underwriting to where there's new health questions almost every month.
Yeah.
There's new apps every month,
Modifications.
modifications, or even in the signatures, like the phone signature, like God bless Medico, love y'all. They just released their new Mayan Roller on the 6th. And so I did an application on the 6th. And you know how you do the phone verification? They added in like a couple lines to the phone verification that threw me for a loop. And one of the lines was, you know, it was the fraud line or I think it was something like that. But then they asked, or they said, it's like almost like, do you attest that you will be alive?
Or you will have the same health condition.
Yeah. It said,
and that's the thing. Like I told you the other day, you can go 6 months out on underwriting. Well, how are you going to be able to attest that you're going to have the same health condition 6 months from now?
Right.
But it's almost like saying, well, okay, if you're sick then and we don't have a deal. I mean, that it's like, wait a second.
That's very ambiguous language.
Yeah.
Very, very. You know. But it's stuff like that.
Hey, Brett, are you going to be sick in 6 months?
Yeah, it gets them an out.
Right.
You know, and then you've got a 2-year contestability period where they can go back. And I had that happen to me once out of the thousands of policies that I've done. And the lady just flat out lied. And there was somebody else in the town that had her same name and they went to the same doctor. And I called that and I said, look, there's a mistake here. They're looking at the other lady. Like, no, we looked at all that. This is her. I called her back. I went through the medical questions again. She answered no to everything, and lo and behold, she's just flat out lying again. But that was one particular case. But normally these things slide through because we get a lot of things that are on the fence, joint replacement, cataract surgery. It's kind of iffy. You know, well, you know, I had the one knee done and the other one's okay, and maybe I might need it down the road. I'm not sure. Is it in the medical records that he's recommending to have? Well, no, not yet. You know, and then they get on the phone with the underwriter and they could even be kidding. Oh, yeah, probably down the road. We need that, you know, declined. You know, so we have to be careful in these things because you do have that 2-year period. And I'll even tell clients that I'm like, look, we have to be upfront with this. Here's what can happen. Here's why we have to be correct. And they'll say, well, no, I mean, I'm not going to get it done or whatever. And then we can move forward. But I call a lot of underwriters all the time. You know, if I get something that's kind of weird, definitely I'm calling different companies and getting it right from the horse's mouth. And I'll put that on the application. You know, got a prelim from so-and-so. That's not a guarantee, but at least I'll look at that and take that under consideration because these things do change all the time. I mean, I found out, I just happened to call Mutual one day for a diabetic situation and oh, yeah, no, we don't care about insulin anymore. The 50-unit thing, that's out the window. We don't care how many units they're taking. What? Because that was always, you know, more than 50, you're done. And so now we have a whole new open door for people that we didn't do before, you know, that we can push through. I kind of went up on a tangent there.
It's
Can
okay.
I
So
play devil's advocate for a
go
second?
ahead.
So in these discussions, we're talking about all these complications and underwriting issues. If I'm somebody new to Medicare and you're explaining to me all this, like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, look at you, this is a cost, you know, you have coverage for life. There might be some rate increases, you know, we have to deal with this. I'm going to be your agent for life. If I'm like, why would I want to deal with all this? I can just get an Advantage plan. You know, I'm healthy. I don't have to pay for it. I, you know, travel from time to time, but, you know, I get a PPO and I know that, you know, I would rather pay nothing and then have the $10,000 payment on the unlikely event something catastrophic happens to me, than pay and deal with all these underwriting issues.
I think it's because people aren't informed is what it really is. Like the individual I was interviewing this morning, you know, she was asking me, she's like, I have friends that just go to Medicare.gov and they just get their own plan. And she was like, so why are you guys different than if I can go on Medicare.gov and do it myself? And I go, you absolutely can, but you probably don't know what you're doing. Is the real and honest statement. Because I don't even know on Medicare.gov, can you plug in doctors? I think it's just zip code and prescriptions,
Yeah,
and they
that's
pull
all I've
up
seen.
Advantage plans and go
At some point,
boom.
an agent has to look at that.
Well, exactly.
It's just like ARP sends out apps and you send it in and, agent has to look at it and they have to, there's going to be some underwriting come back on that.
But here's a great example for you here so I'm helping Christine with one of her brother's clients that has an Aetna Advantage plan, and he just moved his brother who's in Texas to assisted living, or it was something like that. But his brother has an Advantage plan, and he's power of attorney over his brother. He's been in this Aetna plan. He's like 70, 71, something like that. His brother was around the same age. He never knew about supplemental plans. He never knew how they worked. He never knew what they did. So when we were talking about his brother moving, he's a pretty healthy guy, but he knows down the road he's not going to be so healthy. So I was telling him, it's like, Advantage plans are for healthy people, supplemental plans for sick people. But where it hurts is you got to be healthy first, then sick. You can't be sick and then get it. That's the issue. So I was talking to him about it, and after 45 minutes, he was just like, Can you sign me up for one of these too? Because I want to get him on it, definitely. He needs it more than I do. But can you sign me up on one? And I was like, respectfully, I can't, because you're Christine's brother's client. I don't want to steal that from her brother. But just go and ask him. And I was like, what are your health conditions? And just went through quick underwriting with him. I go, it sounds like you probably qualify for mutual. Go to Christine's brother, have him do a mutual application with you for January 1st. He just has to ask you some questions. They take 60 days out for underwriting. Mutual does. Just do it in November. You'll be fine. He was so appreciative of it, but he just didn't know. And that's the big issue where a lot of people, you don't see marketing campaigns for supplements. You don't get brochures for supplements. You don't do anything like that. It's because people don't know.
Yeah, they don't have any idea. They think they have a supplement and they have an Advantage plan, turns out. Like they just don't, they are not clear. It's just confusing and they're overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they need us so bad.
Yeah.
Call us. Right?
So to kind of transition into the second portion I wanted to bring up here, it's about underwriting, but I think when we're talking about the future of underwriting, what it's going to look like, this is what scares the hell out of me. So some companies have already been doing this. Did you ever write a Garden State application?
I think I did one.
I did like 2. Okay. That company scared the hell out of me because there was no underwriting.
Oh.
There was underwriting, but they didn't have a staff of underwriters. You would actually know by the time of the application if you're approved or declined. And as you would go through the health questions, once you click no to all the health questions, it would say, congratulations, you're approved. That quick. But what was so scary is, I remember there was one guy who was like, swore he didn't have chronic kidney disease or something like that. I remember he was like, yeah, just a little kidney disease, just only a stage 4, there's 5. But
Jeez.
I remember it doesn't go to anybody to look at. They take you on your health questions. So when you talk about that 2-year period, as an agent, you better have your error, your E&O insurance, and you better beef it up here in the next few years, because with that Garden State, if I would have put no for the kidney question, he would have got approved and he would have got coverage. Well, guess what? The first time that he goes to see his kidney doctor, they're going to rip that policy straight out of his hands, and he's not going to have any coverage. So I think what they're doing is they're not baiting the agent, but they're putting a lot more responsibility on it. So there's a new version of Puritan, which is an Aetna company, but it's not seen as an internal replacement. It's the same Aetna underwriting. I can't think, it's like Capital Life and something else. Chris sent it to me. Get this. They have an instant decision button, not like previously with, where it said approved or it would go to underwriting, but it's an instant approval / instant underwriting through a computer. What it does is, if you submit the application, you either get a green light or you get a yellow light. Green light, they're approved. They have a card right there for them that gets emailed to them. They have everything there. Yellow light, it takes you to a link. And you can either do this on the phone with them or the person can go in their email and do it themselves. What it will do, it pulls your Milliman report and it highlights the medications that they have an issue with or changes in medications. So what you have to do then is correlate between the application and this underwriting tool.
Yourself
While you're on the phone with the client. So then you have to put in further details if something pops up once they get it on their side, which it takes like 2 minutes for their computers to review it. Then if it goes yellow, then it gives you like a little area on this link that'll take you to where you have to fill it out, basically. You have to plead your case is what you have to do with them on the phone.
Dang.
Wow.
So after you plead your case, after you give information about the prescriptions, then you have to submit that. That goes to another computer and then tells you if you are approved or declined.
This is all Puritan. Or
This is all, it's this new branch of Aetna that they're offering.
Taking the human element out of it.
So they're taking the human element out of the actual underwriting process, but they're putting more responsibility on the agent to not throw stuff out there, which I can appreciate. Because you look at some of these people that have like COPD and they call the company and they go from a plan F to a plan N. And they're like, how the hell did you don't even, I forgot what company it was, but I'm like,
that's ARP.
I was like, you decline. You decline for COPD. It's the third question in there, but you're telling me because this guy called your office with a plan F that he now qualifies for a plan N, that if I would have put my name on it, it would have came back declined for COPD. But since it's your in-house name, it gets approved? No.
Do they still do lateral movements? Because what they are,
Yes.
you could do Afghan or whatever you want.
Correct. You can
Yeah.
still do that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. But that's where I think it's going supplement side, because it's kind of been going that way for a few years. I mean, you look at like Great Southern Life. Great Southern Life, if you call them with an underwriting question, they go, here, look at your underwriting guide, is what they look at. They don't transfer you to a person. There's no risk selection department. And even back when you would submit it, what would happen is you would call in, they would verify that the person's on the line, they just verify their information. They go, okay, we're going to send this to underwriting. Give us 2 minutes. They put you on hold and they come back and they either go, congrats, you're approved, or unfortunately, you've been declined. There's no human looking at the applications, and that's what those big companies are going to, is putting more of that responsibility on the agent. So they can say, when that big bill does come, if you say you don't have cancer, that's what kind of ties into, we're talking about the anastrozole and stuff like that. We have to be careful where you can say, you don't have cancer, you're just taking anastrozole. That's it. It's a maintenance medication. I bet the first time you go to your oncologist and you as an agent, you have to do all of that underwriting and stuff like that. And basically, after you submit it, you have to underwrite what you just did and then resubmit it for approval. If that gets approved and they put a big bill in at an oncologist, that's coming back on you. That's when you have that E&O insurance, the errors and omissions, if you guys don't know what that is. But that's...
Why are we responsible for that if the company approved it
Because we
and they've
sent
done
it.
the research?
We vouched for it. We sent it. And because this process that he's talking about,
Yeah.
we are part of that process. So that's why he's saying we could.
We're now the underwriters, so it doesn't.
We're now the agent. We're now the underwriter.
Correct.
And if the customer, and it's recorded, says, no, I've never been diagnosed with cancer, and then it's approved and a month later they've got it, that's our fault?
Not necessarily, not in the way I'm trying to use it here. I'm
Yeah.
saying if they're hiding something,
But
if they're lying to us, yes,
we're still responsible.
we'd be responsible until we pull that phone recording and send it over to them.
Everything is based upon the best of their knowledge and belief at the time of application.
Right.
I had a client once, was with Cigna, and she called me back in the afternoon. I did the app in the morning, and she said, Brett, I went to the eye doctor today, and the doctor says I have to have cataract surgery. I called Cigna. I said, here's the deal. I put this thing in. She didn't know. And they were like, she didn't know at the time of application. They approved the application, and they paid for her cataract surgery. So, but every company is a little bit different with the way they handle that. And when we're moving forward with this new computerized stuff, we do have to be more thorough, as most as we can. We can't predict the future, but I think a lot of the issue comes from really Medicare fraud. I mean, you look at Florida rates, the reason they're high is because of a high incidence of Medicare fraud. They see a senior walking through the door, right away you get tested for everything. It's like you take your car into a mechanic and say, tell me what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
They're going to have a $20,000 bill. You need all this stuff. And they will literally try to find things wrong. And that's what causes rate increases, because these tests are expensive, number one, but then they find something that may be kind of iffy, and it's like, okay, now we have to investigate further or put you on this medication that's now declinable. So it's the whole system that's responsible for where we're at today. It's not just insurance companies in particular. They're looking at the bottom line. They're looking at the claims that come through, profit and loss. They have to make adjustments. Actuaries look at it. Okay, well, we have to be more strict in this area because we're getting a lot of claims in this area. We have to weed these things out. And so it's a very large, situation that goes into play. Unfortunately, we're part of that. We have to be on our game and roll with it.
I mean, take my lady who I was talking about maybe last week or the week before with the plan in, that number one, so she went to the ER because she was just lightheaded. Okay. They were bringing in doctors left and right, and they actually billed her emergency copays for every doctor that came in. Okay. There was by the time she was dying, there was 10 or 11 doctors.
Times 20. Or times 50.
It was really weird. It was 35 because it's up to 50.
Oh, wow.
But well, first off, it was a wrongful bill. They billed it incorrectly.
Right.
But every doctor, and she goes, they were just bringing people in left and right that would pop in for 2 minutes and then leave. And she sees a copay with all these doctors' name on it, and it's 10 or 11 doctors for her explanation of benefits. Number one, it was wrong. But number two, this is, that was in July. Now we're in September, I think. Yeah. Now we're in September. Okay. She had 0 specialists before July when she was feeling dizzy and lightheaded. They couldn't figure out what's going on. Guess how many specialists she has now?
35.
6.
Dang, 6?
6 different specialists
Wow.
that she has rotating appointments with for tests
Oh my goodness.
because they cannot figure out why she got dizzy.
She needed to eat.
Why she got dizzy?
With her blood sugar
went down.
Yeah, like Sophie, needed.
Right. They test you to death. It's ridiculous.
But even her too, because I was asking Brad for help on this too, and you too, Greg, when I was going through. I was like, this looks to me like Medicare fraud. And that's what she was starting to think too. And then she goes, wait, are they just running these tests to get paid? And I go, exactly. And she
it's
goes,
twofold though, not just to get paid, but to CYA, because they could not diagnose what it was. And sometimes the doctors, and this is hard to explain to clients, doctors don't give a crap what you have. You just have to have it. They're just going to go in and they're going to say, this is what we need. So plan F, plan G's, that charge gets taken by the supplement. But if you have a plan N, that's not going to get covered. There's going to be a copay if it's an emergency room visit. So yes, they do obviously do it because there's a service involved. They're showing that there's a service they're going to get paid for it, but also because they want to make sure that, hey, if we don't have an answer, we want to make sure that we at least put the attempt of trying to figure out what it was.
But in this case, she was admitted as an inpatient. So now you're Part A. So all this ambulatory Part B stuff, which they were getting billed for, total Medicare fraud. I had one of my clients, and people generally don't read their EOBs, but she read her EOB, and she's like, you know what? I was in the room. I had doctors come in, probably 20 doctors came in. They looked at my chart and walked out. And then she saw her EOB. Each one of those doctors charged $2,000. So didn't do anything. Came in, looked at the chart, left. So there's a tremendous amount of Medicare fraud out there. I mean, there really is. And people getting procedures that they really don't have. I have medical friends and nurses, and they say, man, there was one cardiologist here on the south side of Austin. We were out driving somewhere, and she said, yeah, that hospital or that cardiologist, if you go in there, you're coming out with a quadruple bypass, whether you need one or not. They'll just think, oh, I found this and didn't need it, but hundreds of $1,000s worth of bill, and unfortunately that type of thing happens, and it's, yeah.
And that's kind of what's, I think we talked about future, again, can't predict it, but the companies are seeing that offer the coverage. And in my opinion, it's one way to have a get out of jail free card is to have no underwriting department and have the agent be the actual underwriter. Because if that day does come, if they are healthy within the first 2 years and they might have fibbed something on their application and they go to this cardiologist and they have quadruple bypass, they're going to go, no, your agent lied. We're going to take this away here. Instead of them having their own department say, oh, we messed up. It's our fault. This should have never gotten approved. Because I had to ask Cigna about that too for the lady with the medical codes. And I asked her, and I was like, let me just get this straight here. So if I would have cropped out these medical codes, what she's diagnosed, and you took this note saying she doesn't have cirrhosis, would she have been approved? She goes, yes, she would have been approved. I go, okay. What I'm concerned with for you guys is you didn't catch these 3 medical codes that are in her history. How did you not catch those? And they go, it must have just slipped through the cracks. And then I said, well, if she does have rheumatoid arthritis and she goes to a rheumatologist, twice a month, whatever it is, are you guys not aware? And she goes, oh, at that point, yeah, we would have to enact the 2-year look back and go back through the application. And then probably if she starts putting in quite a few bills for rheumatoid arthritis, then we'll just redact her policy. Yeah. We'll just cancel and get rid of it. And that's from the underwriter themselves, where they didn't even know about those codes. They didn't do anything. But I wanted to ask her, if I would have cropped that out, would you have taken it? And she goes, yep, she would have been approved and she would have been charged by the end of the day today for her policy. So it's the companies they're looking to pass the blame is what they're doing. That's my opinion.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I knew that, there's a clause that we have to read when we're doing the application about you being aware of something and pre-existing conditions. I thought it was only 3 months in most companies. Like if you get a new...
Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on. You guys are...
I didn't know anything about this 2-year thing.
So when we talk about... the 2-year window, what it is they keep your application on file for 2 years. If at any point, so like say you had heart disease, but you lied on your application, you said no. Say a year from now, you have to go to this cardiologist and you're on schedule for quadruple bypass and it's going to be $500,000. And so they're going to have to pay, 20% of that. What they're going to do is when they get that bill, they're going to go back and look at your application and go back through your health records and see.
But it's their knowledge. Maybe they had a fine heart.
But that's what I'm saying in this situation is you lied, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying you have a fine heart. I'm saying you have a bad heart and you lied.
Oh.
Yes. If you have a fine heart,
I'm confused with all this.
if you have a fine heart, you're okay. What it is, it's to catch people who lie on applications. So they have a 2-year window where they can go back and look at the application and look at your health records. And if something is fishy in the application when you submitted it, they can pull your coverage immediately from you.
And the only way they're going to come after me is if they listen to the phone call and I'm like, oh, that's okay. We'll just go ahead and put it through or something like that. Then it's on me.
You could, correct. They'll rip the coverage out from underneath the person's feet, but it's not going to get back to you until you hear from the customer, because then that person is going to be pissed. Even
So
though
if the customer files a complaint, then
it's going to go to you.
then that's when my
Then
errors and
you could
omissions
you
comes
could
into
lose your
play.
errors and omissions. You could lose your appointment. Yeah, you could lose your appointments with the company.
and
you
I'm
know,
fined
whatever.
like
It could be,
thousands of
possible.
dollars.
Yes.
huh?
I
go to jail.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what the penalties are.
Yeah.
And you know what gets me is these states that are guarantee issue. You know, New York, we've got birthday rule states.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Anniversary.
Missouri with their anniversary rule. The rates aren't that bad.
Mhm.
You know, and a lot of the people that we flip during these times, they have stuff going on. They put in some big bills.
Mm-hmm.
So really, are they losing that much money? You know, does it really have to be squeaked down that much, you know, and get that stringent?
Mhm. Now, when you talk about pre-existing conditions, this is on a whole separate realm, just so you guys know. So if you are, let's say, if you're 75 years old, right? And if you just have, say you've been on just original Medicare, right? That's it. If you go and apply for a Plan G, some companies, I know AARP has a 90-day window because you're not replacing coverage. If you're replacing coverage, your pre-existing gets waived immediately. But if you just randomly go out and say, you know what, I want to start going to some doctors. You know, I'm 70 years old, I've been healthy, but I want to get my body checked out. I want to do everything. Let me get insurance before I do all of this. You go and get your Plan G. AARP has this nice little 90-day, it's at the very bottom of the application. It's not even for the agents to read when you're doing the e-app. It's in the actual underwriting guidelines, and the explanation of benefits is where it's at. But it says in there,
Tour guide.
if you are not replacing coverage, the first 90 days you are not covered. Now, what that goes along to that I have seen before is if you're doing the application and you don't put in there that they're replacing coverage, even if they are. So if you have a Plan G with Aetna and you're rewriting them to AARP for a lower premium, if you don't put in the application that they are replacing coverage, they're not covered the first 90 days.
Well, now, wait a minute, because Medicare, that only applies to people that are not, because Medicare is coverage. That's creditable coverage itself. So if somebody's open enrollment, they didn't have any insurance at all prior, zero. And they went to the doctor and they said, okay, you know, you've got this condition. AARP is not going to cover that for 90 days. Cigna's 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they have a co-op plan that's not considered creditable coverage, that pre-existing condition clause is there. And sometimes it's hidden. Transamerica had 6 months. And I called Transamerica once. They said, well, yeah, not even Medicare. We don't consider that creditable. I'm like, wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, that scared a lot of people, that some people actually read their policies. They would see that and freak out. You know, what is this? I'm not going to be covered for 6 months. You know, so Cigna's good with it. I mean, it's a very rare situation where people don't have any insurance at all. And then they're OE, they start coverage and they had something going on. But that's really the only time that applies.
It's not very prevalent.
Correct.
It's maybe like the one-off.
But some people will freak out. They'll read that and they just misconstrue it. And you get that phone call.
I remember in one application, I forgot what it was. I think it was in New Jersey or somewhere. But this lady, like, through fine tooth comb, went through the application, and in there's that statement that to where if the company ever goes under, it is then taken over by the state of New Jersey, and the state of New Jersey has to pay. And it said in there, it's like not a final expense, but it was like a life insurance of like $50,000 was your benefit. And she was like, oh, I didn't even know you got me a $50,000 life insurance policy too. And I'm like, I didn't. That's if your company goes under. That's just saying they're going to pay up to $50,000 in the meantime while you're switching companies. That's your allotment.
Is that a GI situation?
Yeah, a GI. So you have your, was it 63 days?
Yeah. Okay.
You have your 63 days to go into another plan. But in that 63-day window, if you say, if it ends September 1st and you apply for coverage for November 1st, then the state of New Jersey you have an allotment of money that you can use for your health concerns.
Right.
For your health
that's when
coverage.
you're in the middle of a surgery
Yeah.
or something.
Correct. So if you have your bypass scheduled, whatever, if you have a stent placement scheduled, you can still have that happen. It's just going to be on the state's dime, not the company's dime, because they're insolvent. So there's a lot of little things kind of like that. But I think it's going back to, it's going to get pretty scary here pretty soon. And if you're not up to date on regulations and litigations that are in those applications, if you're not reading it with a fine-tooth comb, if you're not double and triple checking, you better have your E&O ready, and you better have it bumped up, because something, it's not how often, but something is going to happen, because everybody makes mistakes.
Oh, and you have to make sure the clients understand everything. I know, I got called on the carpet by Mutual of Omaha because a lady didn't cancel her policy. And I'd saved her like $50 a month going over to Mutual. Well, she called Mutual. Oh, I got scammed into this policy. I never did this policy, even though she did a voice signature, it's all recorded. But they came after me saying, I scammed this. And I called the client and I explained to her what happened. I mean, she was a little bit losing it. Well, fortunately, I got her on the phone with Mutual. She explained that, okay, yeah, I canceled the wrong policy. I should have canceled Aetna, blah, blah, blah. It took me about a month to get it all sorted out with a lot of back and forth to their lawyers. But here's a case that just reiterates how important it is to follow up with your clients. You get the deal, you're not done. You're done when the thing gets paid for and they understand everything and they cancel their old policy. And, you have to make sure that things get followed through. People still don't cancel their policies like they should. Even, you told me you were going to cancel. No, I didn't,
Right.
I mean, and it just, sometimes we just have to reiterate things a few times, but things will come up like that, and you just have to make sure you've got the records and everything's in order. We have to take our time and do it right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line.
That's really it.
Follow up.
Oh yeah.
That's really what this whole underwriting thing is, that we've actually just slow down. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you're doing it right. A simple letter change from an application, if you have to change a middle initial, something like that, that's super easy. That's a 2-minute phone call. That's easy peasy. Not putting on there that they're replacing coverage and that person go to the doctor and get a bill. That's not as easy. So that's our tip of the day here as we wrap everything up. That was actually a quick hour. Take it slow. Take your time. Nothing good happens when you rush. That's why people don't get married on the first date, unlike the people I was telling y'all about yesterday. So everybody, y'all have a great Thursday. We'll be back here tomorrow at noon. Have a good day and go sell something.
Call us.
Call us.
Call us.